Hi, Paul Thomson from Spitfire Audio here. I'm going to talk you through some of the ideas that I've used in my trailer music for the Abbey Road Orchestra high percussion library. Things that specifically deal with building suspense or tension and help you kind of take those steps to kind of, in the context of a piece of music, step up a level in whatever way that is. And there's a couple of different ways of doing that. But let's start at the very beginning, and if I just play a couple of bars and then I'll tell you the technique that I've used here. So we're going to look at the wood blocks. You can see I'm focused on there. Now these are really, really useful sounds. You can use them in all kinds of different contexts, like this kind of, that kind of, oh, something's going to happen, that kind of feeling of dread. But you can also use them in this very metronomic style. We call that metronomic. It's a bit like a metronome clicking. And the thing that makes it work particularly well is the space, the sound of the space around it. For me, if I can give you a demonstration here by showing you, if we turn the mix off and I just put those close mics on, now you can hear a little bit of the room sound behind that close mic, but what you really lose is you lose the kind of feeling of depth and width that you get from that mix that includes all of these, the decatry and the outriggers and all that kind of stuff. And for me, that's the thing that gives it the richness and the sense of moment. And you might think that sounds like a totally ridiculous thing to say about somebody tapping a wood block. But I think contextualizing all of the sounds that you use is really, really important. And putting this back in that space, you could even go one step further and you could say, well, let's put up just the ambient mics. And now it's even further back. There's some element of mystery there. It's just a way of imbuing this simple sound and all this sound is doing is that kind of regular thing that's giving you that feeling of suspense. But I always think about trying to make every sound as meaningful and as characterful as possible. And this is absolutely the time when you should reach for those slightly further away mics that give you the context of space and make the sound more interesting just on its own. So we're using the woodblock here to give us the feeling that time is ticking, that something is happening, that there is a building feeling of suspense and tension. Now, what do I do later on? Well, we have this section that builds slowly and we add a few instruments in. So you can see the guiro comes in here. So I'm adding and layering things. I'm doing a few cross rhythms. All of this stuff is quite sort of straightforward. We're still in the kind of building and waiting moment of the music. And then we have a transition point. Now, you'll have heard me talk about this before because it is one of my favorite ways to change a piece of music in a way that really makes your brain kind of reel back and makes you think, wow, what just happened? And that is changing the meter and the tempo at the same time. Now here we're going from a very straight 4/4 meter into a 7/8 meter. So, and that is grouped in, I'll play you the groupings. So you can hear there we've got 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3. So for a period of time that gets you into this kind of lilting rhythm, and we've got lots and lots of, suddenly we've got lots of shakers and high percussion things, and also using sounds like this. So if I pop this one up on the screen, you can see we've got the rods up on the shimmy Daiko, and again, we're just using the basic mix here. So there's two things that are happening here. Very straightforward pattern. I'm using accents, I'm using the velocity. And again, this is something you can apply to any percussion library that has a decent number of velocities. You always make sure that you are shaping the velocities to get a really musical performance. So here, I'm getting that accent, but what I'm doing is a cross rhythm to the 7/8. Now, that's giving you another twist on it. So we're just playing straight through all of the, 1 2 1 2 1 2 3. It will eventually fall back onto the beat, but what it does is it's driving your mind, your ears in two different directions. So if you remember that part, and then we play the overall thing. So do you see what's happening? So at the beginning, we're on the beat, and then we go off the beat for a bar, and then we go back on the beat for a bar, and then off the beat for a bar. And all of these little touches and all of these kind of different colours give you a really nice feeling of texture, and it just makes it a bit more interesting to listen to, because we're very strongly saying that we're in 7/8, but when you've got one single part that's kind of going all the way through it and doing something slightly different, that gives you a really nice balancing texture. How did we get there? Well, let's play that bit. Okay, so there's a couple of different things happening here. So one of the things I really love to do as well is to pass things around from one section to another, so that you're hearing not only the instrument changing, but you're also hearing the location of the instruments changing. So here we've got a couple of different things. So if I solo the field drum and then these two snares that are playing here, this is what's happening there. So two different sounds. I'm using the rims, I'm using the center of the drums as well. And I'm doing that kind of triplety sound. But then leading into that, we've got this fantastic run on the octabands. So if I just solo that. And again, we're moving from the high to the low. And if we just look at this one, I'll show you what we're doing here. We're using the rods, and we've got the section overheads and the close ribbons. So that sounds like this. And then on the kind of answering phrase, we're using the lower pitched ones with the sticks and mix one, which gives us the sound kind of pushed much further back into the room. So that sounds like this. Now, in context. So I'm using the mixes, I'm using my kind of rhythms, the articulations, the sticks, the kind of beaters that are being used on the drums, all to accomplish a slightly different thing. And everything is kind of leading us forwards. Again, anything you can use to kind of propel the listener forwards is really great for this kind of music where you're trying to build suspense, build tension. And part of the way that happens through the sound and through the mics is I'm changing the focus. So we start quite close up onto the octabands with the section overheads and the close mics. And then as it runs through the section, we are back in the mix section. So that again pulls us back a bit. And then the snares give us a really nice ping on the room and accent the final kind of hit, the final run and hit to the new section, which really is the second bar of this 7/8 section. So the same trick as we mentioned before with the wood blocks, where you have that kind of slight acceleration and deceleration, but this time using claves. So that sounds like this. And you can see the ramp as well, not only in the kind of acceleration, deceleration, but also in the velocity and the dynamic that the sticks are being hit together. And then we've got this slight change to 6/8. So we've gone from our kind of 2-2-3 metric into a more of a kind of triplety feel, and that really helps us to drive the thing forward. Now, the other thing that you'll notice, which is kind of counterintuitive, is we started at 132, then we dropped to 121 roughly BPM, and now we're dropped to 101, 102 BPM. And yet we still feel like we're driving forward, and the piece is becoming more stressed and more tense and building more. So the takeaway for this is kind of that you don't have, it's a bit counterintuitive. You feel like if you're building something and you're building excitement, it's going to need to get faster and faster. But actually that's really not the case. And sometimes stepping the tempo down is the thing that, that gives you that increase of pressure and tension. And for me, the way that I always think about this is I feel like it's like those moments in Terminator 2 where the machine will just keep coming. There's nothing you can do about it. You think you're getting somewhere and it's just gets up and keeps coming after you. And for me, it's that kind of feeling of Sometimes the scariest thing is not when something is coming towards you really fast. It's when it's coming towards you quite slowly, and that feeling of dread, it's almost prolonging the agony. And so that's the way that I think about this when I'm doing these tempo changes. So again, just to have a quick look at how that works. So beyond that tempo change, what are we doing to build suspense and build tension towards the end? Very, very simple technique. It's just layering stuff up, adding things as you go through, and really going for the intensity of sound. So finding ways to lock patterns together, so slightly complementary patterns. And then for me, the rhythmic interest comes from those moments where you have the double speed elements, and I'll show you one of those. And because I'm doing the faster notes, the double speed notes on this sound, I've gone in for a slightly closer sound. So I'll give you a demonstration of the difference. So if we go back to the mix on this sound, and then look at the section overheads and the close mics. So we're still getting the depth and richness of the sound, but because we're focused in closer with the section overheads and with these close mics on the drum, you're getting more of the stick against the batter head of the drum. So that kind of crisp attack is just maybe more pronounced in some ways, but it feels closer. And so in the context of everything else, it catches your ear more. So again, that's a kind of depth of field thing. So you're going to use depth of field using the microphones to help focus the listener's attention on the thing that you want them to hear. And that would be these extra notes here. So if I play that in context again. So starting out in this build, we have those double time flourishes, slightly sparse, and then they become more frequent as we get closer to the end. Again, passing them around, so they're not always playing on the same drum, but they're kind of, you hear it coming from different areas of the room, or in a mix where you're creating the room, or you're positioning the instruments yourself. They're coming from different areas of the kind of mix spectrum there. So if there's one thing that I think would be really worth taking away from this, beyond the kind of the tips about, changing meters, changing tempos, building and all that kind of stuff, it's about the sound world that you create. It's about the depth of field in a way. And you can do this with, certainly with any library that has multiple mic positions, or you can do it using reverbs and delays and things like that, and finding a way of creating your own sound field. But there's something about having all of these microphones available that really gives you an enormous palette to play with. And it's something that I think takes any production to the next level. It takes you up a level of quality. And these are maybe the sort of 5-10% at the end of the track that really lifts it above everything else. And it's a thing that I constantly have to remind myself about. When you're in the heat of the moment and you're writing and you're excited about what you're hearing, you don't want to start fiddling with the mics and all that kind of stuff. But if you just take that moment every so often to sit back and listen and put yourself in the position of the listener who comes to it fresh, and listen to the soundscape and think about ways that you can make things sound more interesting. And that, I don't know, sometimes call it ear candy. All of those little ideas are things that make it more exciting to listen to. And if your music sounds more exciting to listen to in a funny kind of way, I don't know if you can separate that from the actual music, then you're definitely doing something right. And so I would really recommend spending a little bit of time every time you're writing on just thinking about this and thinking about the sound field and things that you want the listener to kind of feel more intensely. You can bring closer to them and make crisper and more intense sounding. And you don't even have to start EQing. Just using those different mic positions gives you a whole world of different sounds. So I hope there were some useful ideas in this that you can take away to your own productions. Thank you very much for watching, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye-bye.